Hello, and welcome to our discussion today on COVID-19, digital transformation and cybersecurity. My name is Luke Noonan, and I'm one of the cyber and compliance specialists within the enterprise team at Meta Compliance. Today, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Meta Compliance's CEO and our resident cybersecurity thought leader, Robbie O'Brien. And together, we're going to explore a topic that has forced itself to the top of many boardroom agendas. The coronavirus has forced many organizations to change their business model, whether they wanted to or not. Working from home and Zoom-based interactions are likely to be here for the foreseeable future. As part of our new normal, we have become increasingly reliant on technology to stay connected. Organizations have recognized the opportunity that this rapid digital evolution affords to implement new, modern business models. These digital transformations can also be implemented quicker than ever before, given the dramatic changes in the business environment. However, how can these initiatives be executed whilst ensuring we mitigate the impact of cybersecurity risk? Okay, so let's get started. Robbie, and thank you again for joining us. The first question I wanted to ask is, what do you mean by digital transformation?
It's a good question, look, because digital transformation is one of today's great buzzwords. At the same time, we've lots of other buzzwords like AI and big data. However, in organizations, there are real initiatives. It's about the digital future that an organization foresees. I think it's easier to say what a digital transformation project is not. And so what it is not is business as usual, legacy upgrades, internal IT projects that are called digital transformation projects to make them groovy. It's about the competitive advantage, who your customer is, and it pertains to disrupting the marketplace. There's huge opportunities for organizations to make use of all these new approaches, in particular, the data that comes from these various data sources to be analyzed to provide a brand new picture of what's happening in the market and what is possible in the market. I think one of the things that organizations should do is to have a very stringent process in place as to what gets called a digital transformation project, because you can get user fatigue very, very quickly if that term is used inconsistently.
I suppose a follow-up question would be, why are we even putting COVID-19 and digital transformation in the same sentence? They seem like two quite distinct things.
Well, COVID has opened the Pandora's box of what is possible. I mean, COVID equals global change. I don't think anyone would debate that. We're all a little overwhelmed with the amount of change that the pandemic has wrought upon what was normal life, and things that were thought impossible before, or things that would have taken many, many years, have been executed in a very, very short space of time. Prime example of that would be the move to home working and the almost global adoption of technologies like Zoom to communicate with various teams. I think that people now are undertaking much more ambitious projects with more agility. And I think that's maybe a theme of this particular talk is I see agility coming into the market. Now that has a big knock-on effect for cybersecurity professionals. I think that's the key challenge for our industry is we have been asking for support and change for years at a much more holistic level than what was previous. And I think this presents a big opportunity. But underpinning everything is that COVID or not COVID, the rules won't change. Compliance, regulation, the cybersecurity threats will always be there and always have to be accounted for in hindsight. And so therefore, I think one of the other things I want to talk about today is how do we achieve that?
I suppose from what you've said there, Robbie, there's a lot of things we need to consider. Obviously, agility, the new normal with COVID-19, digital transformation. I suppose another aspect to incorporate into this is where does cybersecurity fit into all of this?
From our perspective, I think digital security, digital transformation, cybersecurity are essentially about culture change. And both of these demands on our organizations are about people and outcomes. And both are hugely built around data. I think that digital transformation project represents a major maneuver by an organization from one state to another state over time, which has great impact on the people within your teams. That is really the types of opportunities that hackers love to exploit. And I think in the future, we're going to see some fairly high profile data breaches that has arisen out of this particular period of time where we're moving away from tried and trusted customs and practices to some a new state, which is current state. One of the other themes that I would talk to people about in relation to digital transformation is that you must bake cybersecurity into your projects from the outset. It's very, very hard to retrofit. I think the other thing about COVID and cybersecurity is we have seen a massive increase in the amount of coronavirus type exploits. We have seen a huge increase in ransomware, and the hacking community has seen fit to make the best of a good crisis. Again, I think we'll look back at this period and see it as time of great challenge for many, many people.
And from what you've said there, Robbie, obviously there's the agility, there's digital transformation, there's the need for us as cybersecurity professionals to react and to plan ahead. I suppose where does secure by design come into this?
Secure by design, privacy by design is really, I think, the best practice within the industry. But oh my God, it's very, very difficult to implement. I think security is the last thing that most people think about. And there are so many influences on the overall direction of a transformation initiative. Typically, there's a lot of strong personalities involved in those types of projects. In my experience, security involvement has always been seen as a negative thing, as a blocker. And I think that requires security to present themselves in a more agile role. In reality, we are the firemen of the organization. My experience with security professionals is day in, day out, they are dealing with crises. They are dealing with incidents. They are responding to incidents. They are responding to quite innovative threats. And so that's what the reality of the situation is. But the perception of what security does and the controls that we put in place is typically negative. And I think we need to recast the role in these new initiatives. And I think we'll talk about it later, but I think that's where we have to get clarity from our executive function that they're not prepared to contemplate a digital initiative that doesn't have the correct data protection and cybersecurity controls in place. The other thing is that we are constantly connecting to new external systems and amalgamating different types of data sources. And these multi-level integrations into our data stores from external systems needs to be managed. And that maps back to vendor assessments to ensure the fidelity of these connections. So there's the planning phase of a transformation project, but there then is like an ongoing accreditation phase throughout the life cycle of the project and beyond.
With the projects that you briefly described there, can you give us an idea of the technologies that underpin those projects from your perspective?
So I think that's a really good point, and the slide points to technology platforms. I think that technology vendors and technologies are second. They are enablers without a shadow of a doubt. What is the ultimate outcome of the digital initiative? What is the future state, the objective of this investment? It's very easy for an organization to see what's happening in a competitor or in a parallel industry, be communicated by a vendor that it was their technology that made this thing happen. And I'm not debating that it didn't play a fairly sizable part. I'm not debating that. But technology by itself, I think that the outcomes from a business perspective, the outcomes in terms of disrupting the market, creating a new competitive positioning for the organization are quite substantive changes to the way that business conducts itself. And therefore, those outcomes need to be very clearly documented, very clearly understood by all. And that then drops to cybersecurity professionals to determine what is the likely impact on digital assets? What is the likely impact on the processing of data? And that then provides us with the set of outcomes that we can begin to protect against, but also assist the organization in accommodating. I have seen so many people say you can't do something because of GDPR, or you can't do something because of security, and they use risk that isn't really well thought out, a way of placing a hurdle in the way of digital transformation project. And I think our industry can come along and actually help, because cybersecurity is how you do your cybersecurity. And privacy is something that is much easier when you know the rules, and how is that interpreted by your organization's risk appetite. So I think that once the outcomes are determined at an executive level, security can facilitate, and then technology comes into play and is much easier deployed, given that the clear outcome is understood, and you really don't end up with a very expensive technological foray that doesn't deliver those business benefits that are critical to a digital transformation project. Look,
And I think one thing that you've been clear on in a lot of these sessions and these webinars is the need for executive buy-in from the top down to make any project successful. I suppose a follow-up logical question is, what are the approaches that you would advocate to try and ensure that leadership function places security at the center of their digital transformation strategy or program?
so I think that perception is very important in these multidisciplinary projects within organizations, or indeed, you don't have to be a large or a very, very large organization. If you're changing your business model quite substantively, it still is about the hearts and minds. If you don't have the hearts and minds of the executive team as to why they should bake security and data protection into their project from the outset, then you really have an almost impossible task. The key here is agility, and to show that, yes, the security function, cybersecurity function within the organization exists to protect, but the cybersecurity function is an agile function and can act as a facilitator of these digital projects. You cannot have these types of projects without cybersecurity and data protection. It would be akin to a major investment initiative without having financial prudence and financial oversight. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your outlook, it's training that is the key. A digital transformation project and a cybersecurity project is typically about culture change. And I've always maintained that digital transformation is a superb way for greater credence to be given to information security, because you typically have projects that are forward thinking, but the leadership function is open to ways to avoid unnecessary risk. And cyber risk is something that I don't think any leadership function is ignorant of. And I think that it's something that is a inherent piece of the overall business case for the actual initiative. And people want to understand the why. They want to understand, how will their industry be changed as a result of this digital transformation project. What you're looking for is change in your business model that gives you significant advantage, that changes, the rules, so to speak. That's interesting. People in your organization will be afraid of the change, but I think they'll be motivated by the innovation, because this is really about innovation. And that's why I think agility is probably the key aspect of how the cybersecurity function can play a greater role in the success of your internal projects. So when you're planning out the digital project and you have the outcomes, you have to go, well, how do we engage our teams? How do we bring them with us and have them as, committed agents of change in their own right? At the end of the discussion, I think we're going to put up information on a guide that I've done, which is Cybersecurity Awareness for Dummies. And that book really goes into how would you go about implementing a cybersecurity awareness project, the culture change project. And I think that is relevant within the confines of a digital initiative like this. And I think people would find that useful at the end.
I suppose we spoke there about internal leadership and management visibility, and the argument would be that there's an element of persuasion, and you can champion these people into the projects and make them a very important part of that project. I suppose one of the challenges that a lot of people see is, how does the supply chain fit into this? Obviously, an external body to your organization.
So I think that sometimes you have digital transformation projects that are sparked off by customers, by major suppliers. So if Amazon changes some of their go-to-market, it has a huge effect on all those organizations that use Amazon as a route to market. I think from a data protection and cybersecurity perspective, there's really two things, I think, given the time that we have today, that are worth mentioning. The first is that your vendor management process needs to be baked into the digital transformation project from the outset, because as we mentioned earlier, lots of people think that digital transformation is about technology, and it inevitably involves technology vendors. However, those vendors need to be part of your overall cybersecurity ecosystem, and that you can reach out and truly understand where their digital and cybersecurity integrity lies. Because we've seen time and time again major data breaches happening as a result of somebody connected to your ecosystem. And digital transformation, as I said already, does involve multiple integrations into other data sources that maybe are owned by other people. And so there are impacts on privacy and impacts on inherent security integrity. So I think that having a agile vendor assessment and recording process throughout the life cycle of your transformation projects is critical. So that's the first thing. A lot of people use spreadsheets just for doing the risk assessments, and I think that only goes so far. And I think it's rapidly becoming not a fit for purpose approach. The second thing then, it really is to do with the exploitation of data. Digital transformation projects are about big data. They're about how you can see trends that using machine learning or AI that the human eye can't see. And on the back of these trends, bring to the market a disruptive change that gives you competitive advantage. Now, GDPR states that when you bring a new system into your environment, you should be doing a data protection impact assessment on that new system. And again, that's something that is really just good governance for the protection of the organization in hindsight. So if there were something to happen further down the road on the project's lifecycle, and there was a breach of GDPR on the processing of data, then really a DPIA is something that is critical to be able to rely upon. And so a robust process for managing your vendor and new systems from a DPIA point of view is pretty important. And also then gathering information on the processing of data by these new systems is also something that needs to be recorded as per Article 30 of GDPR. And I think where you can have processes in place that support your cybersecurity from a threat perspective, and at the same time collect information, collect, audit, and version controlling information that then allow you, in the event of something going wrong, to provide, a solid regulatory defense. That, I think, is where you get maximum bang for buck, as opposed to seeing these two things as being separate. So that's really a very small glimpse as to how vendor management and supply chain connects into your digital transformation. Suffice to say, it's one of the more difficult things to map, and one of the more difficult things to try and control as you go forward. So I just want to wrap up and say that for me, I'm fascinated by digital transformation as an opportunity for organizations to innovate around their business model. I think that at the minute, boards of directors are re-looking at their digital strategies, and if they haven't already, are reinvigorating them with a brand new approach.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention. As you all know, these are big topics, and I hope you have found our discussions today useful. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time. I will leave up an email that you can use to reach out to us for a physical copy of the Cybersecurity Awareness Guide for Dummies, or instead download the PDF from our Meta Compliance website. I hope to speak with you all again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.